When a scientist reviewed footage on board his ship, this terrifying creature swam into sight. Sitting aboard the research vessel Point Sur, Nathan Robinson is watching a video feed from a deep-sea camera in June 2019. As he reviews the footage, though, a number of tentacles come into frame and shock the scientist. For you see, this incredible sighting is the first of its kind in U.S. waters. That summer, Robinson and joined several other scientists on the Point Sur to take part in an intriguing project. Titled Journey into Midnight, Light and Life Below the Twilight Zone, the expedition was set to span 15 days in the Gulf of Mexico's deep waters, and while there, they had a particular goal in mind. The group wanted to observe the creatures from the deep in their natural habitat, focusing on a specific aspect. Robinson and company were curious as to how they got around without using light to guide them, so with that in mind, they deployed a special piece of equipment to watch over the animals. The sea is of course home to a number of world's most fascinating animals, such as sharks and whales. But while there's plenty of information out there regarding those aquatic life forms, we still have much to learn about the ocean itself. After all, its depths remain somewhat mysterious. So, in an attempt to unlock some of those underwater mysteries, a team was assembled back in June 2019 by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. The agency recruited 12 individuals for the project, including Robinson. He had previously earned qualifications in both biological sciences and marine biology during his time at college. In addition to Robinson, NOAA also brought in people like Edith Witter, Heather Judkins, Tamara Frank, and Sonke Johnson. They all held PhDs, but this particular project gave them the chance to learn something about the deep sea. And that's not all, as we're about to find out. As we mentioned earlier, the project, Journey into Midnight, Light and Life Below the Twilight Zone, offered these individuals the opportunity to observe deep-sea animals. To aid them in their expedition, Witter brought her Medusa camera along as well, which was specially designed for trips like this. In fact, she's been developing the equipment since 2012. Deep-sea exploration vehicles tend to use a white light when attempting to traverse the dark environment. But in Witter's mind, these lights were having a detrimental effect, especially if researchers wanted to get close to an animal. As a result, she then came up with the idea for Medusa. Instead of the standard white light, Witter decided to install a red light into her newly designed recording system. This particular color can't be seen by the vast majority of the deep-sea population, giving the Medusa a significant advantage compared to other equipment. Alongside that, it had other innovative features too. Witter implemented a so-called LED optical lure, which mirrored the appearance of a jellyfish in the ocean's depths. For you see, this creature gives off a certain glow when it's attacked, and it gains the attention of large predators. So by adding this to the Medusa, the scientist hoped that it would intrigue the aforementioned animals. Elsewhere, prior to the expedition in June 2019, Johnson shared a few more details about what he and his colleagues were hoping to achieve. He wrote up an in-depth post on the matter and highlighted their goals via NOAA's official website. In turn, the professor also raised some very interesting points regarding the aquatic life in the deep sea. Johnson wrote, "Our mission for this expedition is to explore what happens to deep-sea animals when a very important constraint is taken away from them, that of light. Most of us see the ocean from the beach, where it is green and murky. Those of us who live in Hawaii or parts of Florida see the water as more blue-green. But nobody on land sees the ocean as it truly is," Johnson continued, "a shockingly pure and intense shade of blue. The open oceans look like this because it absorbs light of all the other colors far more strongly, leaving only the blue, especially at depths greater than about 30 meters or 100 feet. In his article on NOAA's official website, Johnson then brought up an intriguing point about the fish in the sea. According to him, the blue light affects their eyesight. to the point where they can't see anything that doesn't have a bluish tinge to it. Yet that isn't the case for the creatures that live in deeper parts of the ocean. Johnson explained at a depth of about 1,000 meters, or 3,280 feet, this limitation of sight goes away because the downwelling blue sunlight is too dim to see. The only remaining light is bioluminescence. Therefore, animals are no longer forced to only be sensitive to blue, and their eyes may branch out to other parts of the rainbow. Johnson then touched upon the group's hopes ahead of the 15-day expedition. He said, "Our goal is to explore this dark world where the limiting rules of blue sunlight no longer apply, and animals are free to wander in larger color space. In particular, we're interested in the visual systems and bioluminescence of the animals that live there." With the plan laid out, Johnson subsequently provided some more details on the team's approach. Unsurprisingly, if they wanted to gather the aforementioned information, they required a number of different tools. So Medusa wasn't the only thing that the group would be bringing with them for the trip. "We will examine this world in several ways," Johnson wrote on the NOAA website. "First, using the Global Explorer remotely operated vehicle, ROV, we will run transects at depths between 915 and 1,830 meters, or 3,000 and 6,000 feet, taking still and video images, and this will be along with low-light video to study the bioluminescence." Johnson revealed that the vehicle could pick up a few of the animals as well, allowing the team to take a closer look at the Point Sur. But as the professor already explained, that would only signal the beginning of their work. They also had other tools at their disposal to analyze the ocean depths. Second, we will use a 100-foot-long custom-built trawl net to collect animals at these depths, again for examination aboard the ship. Johnson added, "Finally, we will deploy the Medusa camera system. It will drift along by itself at these great depths, collecting imagery in a way that disturbs the animals less than a camera or net would." However, no one could have predicted what eventually happened in the final days of the expedition. After the Medusa captured video beneath the surface on June 19th, as Robinson continued to watch the footage, though, he was startled by the appearance of some tentacles. They subsequently wrapped themselves around the Medusa for a brief period of time, before swimming back into the darkness. And when that happened, the researcher was quick to get the attention of his associates on board the ship. To help describe what transpired next, both Johnson and Witter authored a lengthy post on the NOAA website. The pair explained that this was the Medusa's 5th trip below the surface during this particular project in the Gulf of Mexico. But this time, it had captured something truly extraordinary, as we're about to discover. Witter and Johnson wrote, "We knew immediately that it was a squid. It was also big, but because it was coming straight at the camera, it was impossible to tell exactly how big. But big, at least 3 to 3.7 meters, or 10 to 12 feet long. Quickly, those who could identify animals of this sort pulled out identification books. Latin names for animals shot out left and right, and pictures were pointed to," Johnson and Witter continued. "The two of us that knew squid the best were 70% sure it was a juvenile giant squid, but we couldn't go any further. We needed one of the best squid experts in the world, Mike Vencioni, at the NOAA National Marine Fisheries Services." However, the excitement then made way for panic as the weather threatened to ruin the significant discovery. As a storm rolled in, the Point Sur was hit by a bolt of lightning, with the Medusa close by. Thankfully for everyone concerned, the equipment didn't get damaged and the footage survived. Eventually, those on board the ship regained their sense of calm and attempted to contact Vencioni over the internet. They reached him soon after, sending over the Medusa's footage. Then, following another wait, the team got in touch with him via the phone to hear his thoughts on the video. Witter and Johnson wrote, after another painful wait, Vencioni wrote back to say that he was nearly certain that it was a giant squid, which is about as much as we could hope for. We cheered, talked about how to report it, and then had dinner. With dinner finished, we moved to deploy the Medusa again. As for why this was such an important moment, the giant squid had never been sighted in the U.S. waters before that expedition. The massive aquatic animal has long been a mysterious presence in the ocean, earning a mythical reputation in the past. But in more recent times, we've been given tantalizing glimpses of the creature. For instance, the very first photograph of a living giant squid was taken in 2004 by a couple of marine biologists in Japan. Prior to that, the only snaps that existed were of dead bodies that had washed ashore. From there, the next big moment came to light some 8 years later. In 2012, Witter joined a group of researchers near Japan, and it's here that they recorded the first footage of a giant squid in the water. It's quite remarkable that she was also present for the 2019 encounter, experiencing two pieces of history, yet the importance of the latter expedition can't be understated. That trip to the Gulf of Mexico proved that giant squids weren't just living in Asia, as the previous evidence somewhat suggested. And even though it wasn't a 40-foot-long adult, the juvenile might not be the only one in the American waters. With that in mind, Witter and Johnson discussed the matter further in their joint NOAA post. Johnson and Witter wrote, "We found the squid after only 5 Medusa employments, despite the fact that thousands of ROV and submersible dives in the Gulf of Mexico have not done so. This suggests that the animal does not like the bright lights of ROVs and that stealth monitoring can allow us to see what has never been seen before. We also found the giant squid here, only about 100 miles southeast of New Orleans," Witter and Johnson said. "The old maps often showed serpents at the edge with the warning, 'Here be monsters.' However, the monsters are here in our own backyard. It's not often appreciated, but half of U.S. territory is underwater, extending 200 miles or so from the coast." After the footage was captured, it was subsequently posted on YouTube a couple of days later. The brief clips has since earned close to 2 million views and generated more than 200 comments from online users. In addition to that, NOAA shared the post via its Facebook page as well in June 2019. Once again, the incredible footage made a big impact. The video scored over 75,000 views and in excess of 1,100 likes on social media website. It also earned more than 1,200 shares and generated just under 130 comments as users flocked to catch sight of the giant squid. As for Witter and Johnson, they made one final point on the subject via their post. After referring to the squid as a monster earlier, the pair wanted to make something perfectly clear in their conclusion. Yet that wasn't the only thing they brought up when rounding off their collective thoughts. "Most importantly, we did not find a monster," Johnson and Witter wrote. "The giant squid is large and certainly unusual from our human perspective, but if the video shows anything of the animal's character, it shows an animal surprised by its mistake, backing off after striking at something that at first must have seemed appealing, but was obviously not food." Witter and Johnson added, "Our perspective as humans has changed. What were once monsters to be feared are now curious and magnificent creatures that delight. We like to feel that science and exploration has brought about this change, making the world less scary and more wondrous with each new thing we learn."